The year is July 25, 1785. The Maria, a small American merchant vessel, sails off the coast of Spain, its crew unaware that death is lurking beyond the waves. The sun has barely set when dark triangular sails appear on the horizon, fast-moving ships cutting through the water like predators closing in on prey. Pirates! A deckhand shouts, his voice shaking with terror. Within moments, the enemy ships, sleek, heavily armed, and flying the crescent flag of Algiers, surround the Maria. The crew scrambles for weapons, but they don't stand a chance. Cannons roar, and the first blast shatters the wooden hull. The smell of gunpowder fills the air. Grappling hooks fly onto the deck. Armed warriors, dressed in flowing robes, turbans wrapped tightly around their heads, swarm the ship. They fight with scimitars, muskets, and daggers, slashing through the crew. Within minutes, the battle is over. The surviving Americans are bound in chains, their hands blistering from the iron shackles. For these men, the journey to slavery has begun. By the time they reach Algiers, they will be marched through the streets like animals, jeered at by crowds, and dragged into the slave market. They will be auctioned off to the highest bidder, sold to brutal masters who will work them to the bone. Some will be forced to row the galleys, chained to their oars in the blistering sun, whipped if they slow their pace. Others will toil in quarries or be sent deep into the Sahara. A few might be ransomed, but only if their families can pay the price. This was not a one-time event. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, an estimated 1 to 1.25 million Europeans were captured and sold into slavery by the Barbary pirates, a powerful network of state-sponsored corsairs operating out of North Africa. Entire villages in Ireland, Italy, Spain, and even Iceland were wiped off the map as pirates stormed their shores, dragging men, women, and children away in the dead of night. For centuries, European nations paid tribute to avoid these attacks, essentially bribing the Barbary rulers to spare their ships. But when the United States won independence in 1783, it had no navy to protect its merchants. American ships were now easy targets. And one man, Thomas Jefferson, was determined to put an end to it. The Barbary coast, Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, had long been the hunting ground of some of history's most feared pirates. Unlike the cutthroat outlaws of the Caribbean, these pirates were sanctioned by the governments and backed by the powerful Ottoman Empire. For them, piracy was not just about riches, it was a form of jihad, a holy war against Christian nations. The pirates justified their raids under Islamic law, claiming that non-Muslims were lawful targets. The rulers of the Barbary States, known as the Dey of Algiers, the Bey of Tunis, and the Pasha of Tripoli, profited immensely from this system, taking a share of the ransom money and the sale of slaves. The brutality of Barbary slavery was legendary. Captives were stripped naked, paraded through the streets, and inspected like cattle. Men were either put to hard labor or forced into the navy, shackled to the oars of galleys where they rowed until they collapsed from exhaustion. Women were often sold into harems or brothels, never to see their families again. Even famous figures were not spared. In 1645, Miguel de Cervantes, the author of Don Quixote, was captured and enslaved for 5 years before he was ransomed. In 1627, the pirates raided Iceland, abducting 400 men, women, and children, selling them in the markets of Algiers and Tripoli. In 1631, an entire Irish village in Baltimore was wiped out when pirates took over 100 people into slavery. By the late 1700s, the United States faced the same fate. In 1786, American diplomats Thomas Jefferson and John Adams met with a Barbary ambassador in London to negotiate peace. What they heard shocked them. The ambassador stated bluntly that Islamic law gave them the right to enslave and ransom non-Muslims who had not submitted to their rule. If the US wanted peace, it would have to pay tribute, just like the European powers. Jefferson was disgusted. He argued that the US should build a navy and fight back. But America was still a young, weak nation with no real military power. So, for over a decade, the US paid millions to the Barbary States, money that made up 20% of the entire federal budget. But when Jefferson became president in 1801, he made a decision that would change everything. He would refuse to pay a single cent more. In May 1801, the Pasha of Tripoli, Yusuf Karamanli, demanded a massive increase in tribute. When Jefferson refused, the Pasha declared war on the United States. Jefferson's response: he sent the U.S. Navy. Thus began America's first foreign war, known as the First Barbary War, 1801-1805. For 4 years, the U.S. fought a brutal campaign in the Mediterranean. American warships bombarded Tripoli, clashing with the pirate fleets. But the turning point came in 1803, when the American frigate USS Philadelphia ran aground near Tripoli. The Tripolitans captured the ship and took 307 American sailors as slaves. Jefferson, unwilling to negotiate, ordered a daring mission. In February 1804, a young U.S. Navy officer named Stephen Decatur led a team of commandos into Tripoli's harbor under the cover of night. Disguised as Maltese sailors, they snuck aboard the Philadelphia, killed its guards, and set the ship ablaze, ensuring the pirates could never use it. British Admiral Lord Nelson called it the most daring act of the age. In April 1805, the U.S. launched its final attack. U.S. Marines, led by William Eaton, marched 500 miles across the Sahara with a force of Greek, Arab, and European mercenaries. They stormed the city of Derna, forcing the Pasha of Tripoli to surrender. The war ended with a treaty, one that forced the Barbary States to release all American captives. Though America had won, piracy continued. In 1815, under President James Madison, the U.S. launched the Second Barbary War, utterly crushing the pirate states. By 1830, the French invaded Algiers, and the Barbary pirate era came to an end. For 300 years, the Barbary pirates enslaved over 1 million Europeans and Americans. Yet this part of history is rarely talked about. Why? We often hear about the transatlantic slave trade, but what about the thousands of Europeans who were enslaved in North Africa? Do you think Thomas Jefferson had a disdain for Islam, or he was defending a young nation and their right to exist? Did this surprise you? Do you think history focuses too much on one side of slavery while ignoring others? Let us know in the comments. If you found this video thought-provoking, you won't want to miss our deep dives into other forgotten histories of slavery. The Trans-Saharan slave trade, a brutal trade route that transported millions of Africans across the Sahara, centuries before the transatlantic trade. What really happened in those desert caravans? The Native American slave trade. Many don't realize that Native Americans were enslaved in vast numbers. How did this shape history? The Zanj Rebellion, one of the largest and most violent slave revolts in history, where East African slaves rose up against the Abbasid Caliphate. Slavery's final days. How did slavery truly end? A look at the last countries to abolish it and the battles fought along the way. These stories challenge what we think we know about slavery. Watch them now on Native Historian, where history comes alive. And if you found this story fascinating, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more history that challenges what you thought you knew. Until next time, this is Native Historian, uncovering the past,